Hi, I'm Brett Cenkus. I'm a business attorney with a focus on mergers and acquisitions and capital raising, and just about any contract you run into is probably in our wheelhouse, and M&A advisory. Today, we were talking about financing, in the financing context, so startup financing, and we're talking about convertible notes and SAFEs. Before I get into that, if you have a general question about things or want to tell a war story, you can do that below. If you have specific things you want to talk about, or you've got a situation, you can book a paid call with me. You can almost always get me same day at clarity.fm/Brett Cenkus. Okay, let's get into it. So convertible notes and SAFEs, right? So here we are talking about documents that are used in the early stage financing context. The convertible notes have a use outside of this context. SAFEs don't. They're purpose built for early stage financing. But a convertible note can be used in all sorts of different ways, and public companies use them. But in this context, we're using them like we use a safe note. By the way, there's another called the KISS, Keep It Simple Security, which we just don't use much. I know something about it, I've been around it, but I'm not going to talk about it a lot today. And it's a little bit of a hybrid of the two we'll talk about. But all these documents are essentially a bridge to a future priced financing round. So it's a little bit of a hack, and they came into the world back when it was a lot more expensive to negotiate the financing documents. And that was one reason to use them. Another was sometimes early stage financing is classically more art than science, which is to say, it's very subjective, but especially with friends and family, a lot of times it's very difficult to have a conversation. The parties don't feel equipped to do it, or the relationship makes it hard to do, or, there's just risk to it that these documents allow you to avoid that. So it's either we want to do something more quickly or we want to avoid like having to decide on valuation, which is what you need to do a priced round. A priced round means here's your stock, here's your interest, here's the cost. With these documents, what we're doing is kicking the can on that. And we're saying to the investor puts money in, and that money is going to become stock or an LLC interest or something one day in the future. But it will become that based on the terms of it, the price of it will be set in the future, generally at what we call qualified financing, which is a round. It's intended to be a round that's led by venture capitalists who are comfortable negotiating valuation, and they're happy to drive that, and they're going to put a price on the shares the company is selling and price a round. And so convertible notes and SAFEs are a bridge to that round. And so an earlier investor, again, it is still a little quicker even today. We're using really standard forms in the venture capital sort of ecosystem, the National Venture Capital Association's forms, and there's a lot of paper, but they're well traveled, and so it's the cost of it all is not a lot as much as it used to be, but still, there's sometimes that's a driver, or maybe it's a little quicker. A SAFE, by the way, is. So we're using these basically to kick the can on valuation, or to do something quickly, or just to save a couple bucks, which is kind of the least valuable of the three methods these days. And both of these accomplish a very similar purpose, right? Which is to kick the can. But the documents are different. The SAFE is a form that's put out by Y Combinator. It stands for Simple Agreement for Future Equity, and it's a fill-in-the-blank form. At least it's intended to be. We sometimes modify them, but there's a statement on the first page that says this is not modified. So if we do that, we take that statement off and make it clear. But it's one of the benefits of it is it's easy to use without really any lawyering. Convertible notes need to be lawyered more, and there's terms in them. The Simple Agreement for Future Equity isn't equity, right? That's why we say future. And it's not debt. It's this contractual promise to give you equity at some point in the future if the company is successful and does that future round. Otherwise, it just rolls along without any real rights until that happens. And look, that might not sound great to an investor at first, but look, if it's a company that's intended to raise venture capital and grow and be big and go public one day, then the money you put in you're not getting your money back. And they understand if there's a future round, I'll convert and I'll get my preferred stock. That's what venture capitalists buy on the same terms as they do, with a little change. I'll tell you in a second. And this is, but that's fine. And otherwise, I just have this promise that may never come to fruition, and that's fine because if they never raise more money through VCs, they're probably not going to be successful. Like this is the kind of company, like there are lots of lifestyle companies that throw off a lot of cash, but when we're using these, we're typically talking about companies that are going to get on that venture capital express, raise more and more rounds with the goal of being a very, very large company. The convertible note usually has a maturity date when it comes due. It usually has an interest rate. Safes don't, right? And so those are more investor-friendly documents. The reality is, though, that if its maturity comes around and we haven't converted this convertible note into equity, because both of these agreements will convert at a later date if certain things happen. And again, that's usually intended to be a qualified financing, or a financing where we raise a certain amount of money or from a certain type of investor. Then you'll get the interest. But if the maturity date is reached and we never did a qualified financing, more than likely it's because the company wasn't successful. It didn't do what it was expected to do. And so you got to kind of work that out with the investors if you're shutting things down. And that's a little bit of a hassle that you can avoid with the safe, but not really. I mean, this is a convertible note is a debt instrument, but it's an equity risk. And ultimately, an investor knows what they're doing, realizes it's that. And then even the interest, the company is paying the interest with the investor's own money. So how much sense does that really make? I don't know. I mean, they're paying it upon conversion, by the way, usually, but it's fundamentally like the things that seem to make the convertible note feel a lot better from an investor standpoint, really, if you run them to ground, don't matter all that much. But they are a little bit more complex. They're not filling the blank documents. They're easier. It's a context in which it's totally accepted and no issue about why we customized it, versus a safe when we make it clear, not only by taking off the language, but by, we're going to tell that an investor that we did that. They know now we modified something in their intent or up. But fundamentally, they're accomplishing the same thing. They're kicking the can on price and doing something quickly to get money into a startup, and it's going to convert in a future financing round. At least that's the intent. The safe is more company favorable because it doesn't have interest, it doesn't have maturity, it doesn't have any real, rights that come with a convertible note. You could strip those out of a convertible note. It make the maturity date 20 years and have no interest, but you probably need to have some interest with the IRS. But the point being, you could kind of make it look a lot like a safe, but again, it's one over the other. We tell clients, look, the safe is if we're representing the company raising money, a safe is a more favorable instrument. It's easier to deal with. It's quicker. It's less money. Like, roll with that. But then they ask, are the investors going to be okay with it? Now, in Silicon Valley, it's like investors who know what they're doing have seen the safe. They've used it probably. Friends and family may not. And if they Google that up, they might read, this is more company favorable. I mean, it's possible an investor doesn't love it, but probably not, And so, but I think we tell clients, we could say with a good degree of certainty that no one's walking away. No investor is going to say, I really wanted a safe. I'm not doing this deal if you give me a convertible note. They're just not going to say that. And it is possible some investor won't take your safe. And because we put these together usually as rounds, we're going to raise more money than just from one investor. Using both could be not really the ideal situation. But don't read too much into that. It's just not that common that we just don't see investors really you can read about it and understand about it, give them the comfort. We use safes all the time. And I really can't point to investors just refusing to do a deal over that. So by the way, sometimes investors will say that's the issue. That's not even the issue. So I wouldn't get too hung up on it. The safe is a pretty favorable instrument and it's been really widely used. And whether it's a safe, a convertible note, or that KISS document, you need to give, as a company, you've got to give an incentive to this earlier stage investor. If I said earlier, they're going to get the same instrument, stock, preferred stock, whatever it is that the investors in the next round get, and the terms are identical, except if they were really just entirely identical, why would I do this now, right? Why would I put money in now when it's riskier? I could just wait till the next round. The reason is because one of two things. You're going to give them, and sometimes both, but rarely, you're going to give them either a discount to the price in the future round or have a cap on the price, like the valuation that's used in the future. So that's your way of giving an incentive to the early stage investor to do this deal. Okay, so again, safes, convertible notes, KISS instruments, they're all, think about them as hacks for equity, a bridge to a future round. That's their use case, and they work well in that. So again, if you've got as I said earlier at the start, if you've got a general question, feel free to put it below. If you've got specific questions, you can book a paid call with me at clarity.fm/Brett Cenkus. I appreciate you watching today.